Hello, hello, hello. This is AJT500 slash Talented Track 98 slash Heloise Wonderwise slash Hilo, and in this video, this is the pre-Guild War Ramble for Earth. If you're new to this series, I guess we're doing at this point, pretty much this is where I go over the element before the Guild War and talk about what it has going on and potential things that could be used in the Guild War and just how the state of the element is right now. So that's what we're going to be doing for Earth. But I will say it is mostly from my perspective, and what I mean by that is I have not farmed Magna 3 for any LE yet. I'm working on it for Earth. I'm almost to my third sword. I've got 2 done, so I do want to test things with that in the future, but this video is going to be mostly from a primal player perspective, whereas, you know, there will still be discussion about like characters and summons and stuff that apply to Magna as well, but it's mostly going to be from a primal perspective, right? So yeah, that's pretty much that. Also, I want to start this by saying as well, I know especially coming off of the last video with Medusa, I don't want this video to be seen as me being overly critical of Earth and just coming in here and ranting about it. I want to just keep this mostly to, you know, just how the element is actually playing, right? So I'm not gonna try and, you know, dog walk it or anything. Like I don't want to dog on the element in this video. I just want to talk about what it has, right? So not the video for that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's start with the weapons, because I usually do weapons, summons, characters in these videos. And the first weapon I want to talk about is the Exalto, right? Because that's the hot new thing that just came out that we finally got. Now, this weapon has been highly anticipated by Earth players because we wanted to know how it would interact with Galleon Staffs, and I'll get to that. But the first thing that I want to talk about with it is things like the fall 0 key, right? So hitting like the 280%. So the thing that I've said many times is how many do you need? That's a big question, right? Do you need like 2? Do you need 3? Pretty much the thing with this weapon is it's the same as every other Exalto, right? If you are planning to not run your Primarch or your 6 Dragon summon, Primarch character, not Primarch summon, Primarch character or your 6 Dragon summon, you will need 3 of these in order to hit 280% for your fall 0 key, right? That situation may not always come up, but it can be something that happens, right? So that is something to keep in mind, where 3 becomes a very min-max option. The more likely thing that you're going to be using, especially considering a lot of times that you do in these LEs you do double primal, so the third one kind of becomes irrelevant at that point, is 2, right? And 2, the requirement is just to do it single-sided. You need to have your Primarch character and your 6 Dragon summon maxed out in the party at all times for single-sided with 2 to work, which is fine, but that's just something that I always have to say when it comes to these weapons, right? So that aside, let's talk about kind of how it works with Galleon, right? Actually, I'll save that for a second. Let's before we get to that, because that's a bigger discussion. Before we get into that, let's go over the skill that it has, like the unique skills that it has, right? So we got Majesty, which is the attack and HP. Essentially, we got HP, and then big amplifying boost to normal attack damage, right? So, are these good or are these bad? Are these good or are these bad? I'm kind of conflicted on it, to be honest. I'll start with the Majesty because it's way easier. The Majesty, I still feel like right now the Majesty is meant to it's meant to try and counterbalance the fact that you may be using less Galleon Staffs, which also have Majesty on them. So you will have less HP, and if you're using less Galleon Staffs or no Galleon Staffs, you are also missing like the defense bonus that you get from the unique trait on Galleon Staffs. So I feel like the Majesty Call was to try and make it so that if you're not using Galleon, you still have some HP in the grid. I think that was the point. Is that good or not? We'll kind of have to see. But and I will get back to that actually, because there's something I want to talk about when I talk about the Galleon Staff interaction, right? But I think it's an okay skill. It's nothing crazy. I kind of wish we had gotten like the triple attack thing, but it doesn't seem like we're gonna get that, right? So yeah, Majesty's just kind of okay. It's just kind of okay. Onto the amplifying damage thing. Amplify is good. It's good. And I think it's better than some people give it credit for. I think the issue is just the fact of where the element is right now and the characters that you use in it makes it harder to utilize the skill as effectively as possible, right? Because when you take something like the Echo Opus, or the Echo Opus, Jesus Christ, the Echo Exalto, right? You just get Echo for free, right? You just get Echo for free, which is just nice. When you take the crit one, assuming you can hit 100% crit, you kind of just get that. You kind of just get that. You know what I'm saying? You gotta just get that. With the amplification, the thing with the amplification is the way amplification works, and I've talked about this before when I went over supplemental versus amplification in my 000 video a while back. The way amplification works is it's a percentage of whatever you hit, and then that goes on top of, you know, your that makes your new hit, right? So the thing about that is essentially you need to hit higher to take more advantage of the amplification. It's like a boost to already strong damage, right? As opposed to just giving you damage for free. So the issue becomes, if your characters cannot hit but so high, they can only get so much usefulness out of the amplification, right? So for people like MC with Hrunting that already do a lot of damage, they're going to get more usefulness out of this amplification. But when you have characters that don't have as strong of self buffs, or worse yet, when Earth doesn't have as many buffers that can help you hit this amplification, it becomes less of a, I wouldn't say priority, because you still want it, but it becomes less useful. Essentially, you want to hit higher so you can get more amplified damage, right? You want to amplify higher damage. But if you're not doing higher damage, then it's not helping as much, right? So I think this is the reason why some people feel that this weapon isn't as glamorous as some of the others, right? Some of the other Exaltos, because the way Earth works is it can't take as much of advantage of this. This also kind of doesn't help when you have a lot of characters in this element that are built around ogieing, and yeah, not to say that I wanted CA amp at all, no, no, but when a lot of your characters are built around either skill damage or CA damage, and then they don't have a lot of things that buff just their normal attacks, and then we don't have like a dedicated buffer for Earth, that's why this kind of feels lackluster, outside of like MC with Hrunting, right? So, yeah, that's the thing with the NA amp. It's good, but we need more characters to really utilize it, right? We need more people to hit harder to really utilize it. So, that being said, let's get into the bigger discussion here, where it comes to how many of these are you really using and their interaction with Galleon Staffs, right? So I'm gonna pull up a couple grids here, and we're gonna look at some basic stuff, right? So I think this grid right here, yes. So this type of grid is very popular right now. This type of grid is very popular right now. Why is this grid very popular? And as you can see, there are no Galleon Staffs in this grid. There's no Galleon Staffs in this grid. So why is this grid very popular, right? Because you want 2 of these, right? And using a third one, especially when I like this setup is single-sided, but again, you're using Uriel and Galleon, because Uriel is coming more and more to the forefront because we don't have like any other characters. So Uriel's coming more and more to the forefront. So Uriel is staying in here a lot for random full autos, and Galleon, right? So you can go down to 2 and still do single-sided. So there's not really a point in bringing a third when you can already hit the requirements for like your Fall 0 key, right? So that's one thing. I'm not going to try and talk about too many of these other weapons right now because I will get into that. But yeah, this is kind of something that we're looking at. And my point in bringing this up is that because we're not really using Galleon Staffs in these grids, 3 becomes a lot less effective in a lot of places. Because essentially we need, you remember how I just mentioned that you need the damage to back up the amplification, right? So what we're doing is we're putting stuff in the grid to build up that damage so that people can hit into that amplification, and Galleon Staff doesn't help with that, and Galleon Staff takes away too many slots, because you can either put a third Medusa katana, like instead of this, right? Instead of the Sieg Dagger, and then put 1 Galleon, let's say, instead of the World Harp, right? But now we have essentially introduced more cap for Galleon, more amplification, but we've taken out damage sources to hit into that amplification. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of what you don't want to do. And then you also can do like 3 Galleons and two Exaltos, but then that takes up like a lot of space because essentially right there you have to take out your Caintana, which is also multi-attack rate. You have to take out the World Harp. You have to take out the Sieg Dagger. You have to take out all those things, which also means not only are you losing just this massive attack boost from the Sieg Dagger, but you're also losing the access to Echo, right? Which also leads into something else with our Opuses, which I'll talk about in a bit. But all that to say, for the most part with this weapon, you are using 2, mostly just because of grid limitations and how the amplification works. You're mostly using 2. Do you want 3 if you're an Earth Lord? Yes, because you want to be able to min-max if the situation arises. And let's just say we get a character that buffs everyone like crazy, and now the amplification can be more utilized. You might want to run 3 more, right? So that's just a thing to think about. So right now you're probably good with 2 if you want to wait on like a third or whatever, but if you're an Earth Lord, you probably do want a third at some point just for the min-max situation, right? So okay, now let's talk about I'm trying to think. I might go over like extra grids at the end, because I usually go over extra grids. I feel like we need to talk about some of the other weapons first to kind of give the backdrop, to set the stage for the extra grids that I've been cooking up, right? So next, let's go to Galleon Staff. Okay, let's look at Galleon Staff. So Galleon Staff, still around, still here. How's it being used? As you can see before, it's not being used as much in normal grids, right? And I kind of said this, I've said this like in the last I think 3 or 4 of these videos, that as soon as your element gets Exalto, these resonators start dropping like flies because there is just simply not enough space. There is simply not enough space. And I would say Earth is kind of even worse than some of the other LEs because of how restrictive Galleon's weapon is. There's only 2 weapons that are worth stacking 3 of in this element right now. It's Galleon Staff itself and 3 Exaltos. And we kind of went over how you don't really want to use 3 Exaltos, and we kind of went over how you kind of don't want to use 3 Galleon Staffs either because of the lack of space, right? So it's kind of hard to use this weapon. It's kind of hard to use this weapon with the Exalto, which is why it's getting kind of dropped a lot. You can still use it, but it's kind of getting dropped a lot. I also kind of want to mention that yes, you should still get Exalto. If you're investing in Earth, if you're trying to invest in Earth, you should still get Exalto. But I will mention that right now, from my testing, the damage difference between Galleon Staff setups and Exalto setups is not that ridiculously high. It's not that ridiculously high from my testing. It's good. The Exaltos are better, but it's not that better right now. It's not that better right now. So if you kind of just want to do Guild War stuff, maybe just getting like one Medusa just to get the character and then just chill if you're not trying to invest in Earth like that and you already have Galleon Staff might just be the play, unironically. But yeah, so yeah, this weapon, like I've said with all the other resonators, they kind of start dropping like flies once you get Exalto. There's just not enough space. It is still good though, and I will go over this later with extra grids, but I think it may actually kind of be better when you have extra grids, when you have extra slots, because even though I did talk about like the HP, the majesty on the Exaltos, I still personally, I still kind of miss, especially in certain comps, and I'll show these off later, I still kind of miss the defense and the HP that this gave me. And I kind of would I think I would personally rather go with like a 3 Galleon, 2 Exalto type grid for extra grids, just for the safety and survivability when using certain comps. And again, we'll go over that later, right? But all that's to say, Galleon Staffs, you probably still want them. It's kind of hard to even say how many you want now, because it's probably still a 3 angle, honestly, because you can use like 2 of these and 3 Exalto, but I don't know if that's really the best setup. And I think it might be better if you're gonna use Galleon Staff to just use 3 Galleon Staff and then cut down on the Exalto, at least as of right now. I think that might change as we get other characters where it's more so 3 Exalto, 2 Galleon Staffs, and then maybe even potentially just 1 Galleon Staff in the future. But right now I'm still kind of looking more at like you either use 3 Galleon Staffs or you just don't use Galleon Staff at all. That's kind of how it's feeling right now. So yeah, that's Galleon Staff. Okay, moving on from Galleon Staff, let's go hit a quick weapon real quick. We'll go back to Caintana. So Caintana is still very good. Having one of these bare minimum is very, very strong. If nothing else, just for the multi-attack rate, right? The multi-attack awakening is really good. Caintana is also a very strong weapon. It can also boost your damage so that you can hit that amplification on Exalto. It's just a pretty decent weapon. I've been actually leaning towards, I've been copying what I did with Dark a lot. Where you use 2 Fallen Swords a lot in the Elite. I've been copying that a lot in Earth, and it feels pretty good to me. I like having the multi-attack rate from it, and just the damage is nice as well. The other really key thing about this weapon nowadays, let's just go back to the grid that I was looking at before. With this is a Glorybringer setup right here. Glorybringer is like easier to hit than ever, right? Before it was kind of like, okay, we mostly just want to go for 3, and hitting 3 can be kind of weird in some situations, but you kind of always wanted to go for 3, right? Now it is very easy to actually get to 5 because Medusa's weapon is a katana, right? So you have setups like this, where it's like you kind of have, you know, Hrunting, Ultima, Caintana, and then 2 of these, and now you have 5. So your Glorybringer is hitting like as hard as they possibly can. So you get that extra cap up at the end for 5. There's also another party that I have. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's this one. Yeah, this is another type of setup that I have where you're like you're overloaded on swords and katanas. So you have a lot of them, right? So this is another type of grid that I've been running, which I like this as well, right? So Caintana, I think, is a pretty powerful weapon. And because our Exalto does not have multi-attack, we don't have that extra multi-attack. Having more multi-attack is always good, right? It's always good. So having 2 of these is nice. Is it a requirement? I don't think so, but I think having 2 is a nice option to have, right? Okay, so let's move on from Caintana. I knew that one would be quick. Another thing to talk about, Sieg Dagger, right? And this is also going to lean a bit into the Opus talk, right? So, Sieg Dagger. For the longest time, this weapon has been joined at the hip for Hrunting, right? Because of the tree echo that it gives, you know, whenever people take dot damage, right? But, surprisingly, with the Exalto, we have seen this weapon dropped a bit. We have seen this weapon dropped a bit. And I feel like I said, I have to talk about this in tandem with the Echo Key on your Opus, right? Because Earth has actually still continued to use the Echo Key on its Opus. Most Ellies that have gotten an Exalto have leaned in favor of just using their Fall Zero key, right? They mostly just leaned in favor of that, and they haven't even really used their Magna Opus to, you know, have an Echo key like how we did before. Earth is a bit different, because there are situations, and I'm glad I had that party that I was just on up, right? This party is actually like that, where this party does not actually utilize Sieg Dagger, right? And there's another situation that you could do where it's like pretty much instead of these Caintanas and this World Harp, you could do like 3 Galleons right here and keep your Echo key. You essentially get the Echo from the Opus, right? Because from what we've been seeing, some situations it is better to go with the Fall Zero Magna key or Fall Zero Opus key, right? And especially when you're doing like harder content where you are, you know, forced to Ogi, you need to Ogi, you're gonna lean into that Fall Zero key, right? But when you're just doing like quicker full autos like Womdus, Tefnut, stuff like that, the Echo key is actually still seeing use. It's still seeing use. So, yeah, that's a thing. So, what I'm saying is, we are not necessarily married to the Sieg Dagger anymore. You still can use your Echo key on this to try and make up for the Echo that you're losing from the whatchamacallit, from the Sieg Dagger, right? So is the Sieg Dagger still good? Is it in the ground? Is it in the grave? No. No. Again, no. It's still a very good weapon, and you still will use it, you know, for something like, you know, Fall Zero or Hexa, because again, you're going to be forced more into that Fall Zero key or just a normal stamina key so that you can Ogi, right? Because you can't Ogi with the Echo one. So, Sieg Dagger, still good, still used, but we are seeing drops of it in certain places, right? Just because, again, grid space. And even in something like this is kind of something where I talked about with the Caintana, because we're not using that Fall Zero key to make up some of the multi-attack that we're losing from that, you can put in a Caintana here instead, right? So that kind of helps with that multi-attack rate. Alright, another thing. So I kind of covered the Opus and the Sieg Dagger there. The Opus is mostly, like I said, just the fact that we are essentially still using 2 different keys, as opposed to just kind of going all in on the Fall Zero key, right? Another big weapon that I want to talk about that is not even actually Earth is the Fire World Harp. The Fire World Harp is pretty nice, unironically. It's pretty nice. The main reason being because of these stats down here, right? More amplification, more amplification, more damage cap, right? Which is nice. It's nice, especially considering, you know, some of our characters, you know, for one thing, Caim could actually use this. You could use this with Caim because he's available for everything. But the main two people are Glorybringer MC and Raziel, where Raziel's already gunned, so it would just work regardless. But she also has the same thing as Caim, so she could have used this as well. But MC and Raziel get a lot of use out of this, right? And this is also kind of a consequence of the Exalto's amp being not as much of a gain as just boosting MC even further. Essentially, we're choosing to use this weapon to push further into MC. Push more damage into MC as opposed to buffing the rest of the party with a third Exalto, if that makes sense, right? So yeah, pretty much that's how this is looking right now. That's how this is looking right now. We're trying to give more cap to MC and more and while keeping the amp, right? So this weapon also very good. Another weapon that I want to talk about. Let's go to swords this time. Over here. Worldender. Worldender is still winning. Worldender is still winning. Worldender is multi-attack rate, which we don't have on our Exalto, so that's good to have, right? Worldender is good for that. Also, we have a lot of skill damage. We have a lot of skill damage from people like Raziel shooting off her nuke, Olivia and her partner shooting off nukes. Heck, even Alexiel resetting her S3 and nuking with that. Medusa who now exists, and she loves to skill spam. Uriel, who usually needs multi-attack rate and does a lot of skill damage. There's a lot of skill damage. There's a lot of skill damage to be had in this Ellie right now, so Worldender is still pretty good. Even 2 Worldenders is still pretty good right now, because again, the multi-attack rate, and we have so many skill damage characters that it's actually unironically pretty nice, right? So Worldender, I would say unless you're an Earth Lord, I definitely wouldn't, have 2, but having 1 is definitely pretty nice to have. It's pretty nice to have. So yeah, that's Worldender. Okay, next. I can't believe I actually went this long. I had to go back and look at what other weapons I hadn't talked about. I can't believe I've gone this long without talking about PNS. Without talking about PNS. PNS. Yeah, well, it's PNS. It's the same weapon it's always been. It's still PNS. It's supplemental damage. It's cap. It's nice. This is a good weapon, right? We still don't really get to play into the voltage at all because we move further away from Fist, as we should. We move further away from Fist, but unless you're using Fiorito stuff, that voltage doesn't really get used as much. So yeah, but it's still PNS is still PNS. Supplemental damage is still very strong. Cap is still very strong. So yeah, pretty much that. Now, I think the last thing that I'm going to talk about for weapons, unless I think of something else later, is Hrunting, right? I'm not going to talk too much on Andromeda, because Andromeda is kind of like that's like a very specialized weapon. You kind of only get that if you just really love Earth, right? Nobody's really getting Andromeda, so I'm not going to really talk about that. But Hrunting is still Earth. It is still very Earth. They've tried to push it out a little bit. They gave a little nudge with the Medusa comps now, where since she needs all primals, you can do stuff like Street King to try and take MC out. You also can kind of use the Exo Dagger, to do like Mana Diver stuff, or Omni OG or stuff like that. But Hrunting is still pretty much unanimously king when it comes to Earth right now. Berserker, even more so now. Glorybringer, because all of our damage is in MC, and now we can reach even more heights with Glorybringer. Hrunting Glorybringer is just cracked. It's cracked. Especially if you can get stuff like Lobelia coming out and resetting your S1 so you can burst again. It's very strong. It's very strong. Glorybringer MC is very strong, right? But Hrunting, as we talked about before, people probably already know, Hrunting is just a massive boost to your MC. Your MC just becomes like God mode, sicko mode. It has, permanent double strike on your MC. It just does a lot of damage. You just do a lot of damage. The Ogi effect can also be useful too if you need to mitigate damage. It's just nice. Also, when you Ogi with Hrunting, this can also play into the fact that we are losing the in some cases we are losing the Sieg dagger. So Oging on this weapon becomes a little bit more important, because then you can give the dot to everyone so that they can get the echo from that, right? So yeah, Hrunting still ridiculously good in normal content. It's going to be good in Guild War. It's going to be good for burst. It's going to be good for high level stuff. It is just the weapon to have in Earth right now. It is the weapon to have. Like, it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Just as a disclaimer, I know people have asked me in the past, recently, is Hrunting still worth to get a Magna? Yes. I made a video like a couple months back that was like, is Hrunting worth it to get a Magna? And that was pre Magna 3, and I said at that point, yes, I felt comfortable after the tests I had done that Hrunting was worth a Magna at that time, and it's only gotten better because we now have Magna 3. So yes, in Magna, I also think Hrunting is worth getting if you want to buff your Earth, and if you want to invest in Earth, whether you're Magna or Primal. So yeah, that is pretty much Earth in a nutshell, right? The grids are changing, the grids are still experimental, but that's kind of where we're at right now. I honestly think, for the most part, our weapons are kind of okay right now. I think they're kind of okay. I know grid building is a bit weird, but I think overall the weapons are okay. I think now more so we need characters that can help play into our grid more, right? That's what I think. But I think our grid overall feels good, and I'm very happy that Exalto was a katana, because I had been begging for a sword or katana for the longest time, because I wanted to play into Glorybringer, and I'm glad that works. I'm glad that that's what they went with. So thank you for that, Side Games. Thank you for that. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to summons a bit, and then characters. Okay, so for summons, let's go look at these. Earth summons. Okay, so Titan, I'm not gonna go over like too much of this stuff because it's kind of self-explanatory. Stuff like Titan or Yggdrasil, like, yeah, they're your booster. Hangman, Tower, stuff like that. You want your Primarch summon, yeah. Gorilla has seen a bit of a resurgence. I don't really know how good it is right now, but because we can now use the Fa 0 key instead of the Echo one, we can potentially bring Gorilla back into the mix. Because the big thing with Gorilla is Gorilla's Echo did not stack with the or did not work with the Echo key Opus, which was like our main Opus before Fa 0 came out. But now that we're using Fa 0 key, we can bring Gorilla back for that Echo. Is it the best? I don't know. It still has to be tested, but it is, something to consider, right? Tsuchinoko, also something, if you want to use Illnott, or anything like that, having Tsuchinoko can help either get you Ogi to Ogi just on turn 1, or you can just, get Illnott's effect turn 1 by getting all the charge bar and having Tsuchinoko. Is it a must-have? No. No. But is it something that's good? Yes. Alexiel Summon, unironically, is kind of okay because her call effect is actually pretty okay. We'll look at this here. This right here, when some summoner attacks, 3-hit earth damage to all foes, remove 1 buff. This is actually pretty good. The reason why is because we're the element with Hrunting, right? So essentially, all of that you get twice for the extent, like the period of her summon call, right? Because MC always attacks twice with Hrunting. So unironically, this can be a lot of damage, dispels. It's actually not that bad of a summon, right? It's actually not that bad of a summon. So Alexiel, pretty decent. Situational, yes, but pretty decent, right? Mammoth, pretty much the same thing as all these other summons. It is multi-attack rate and it is Echo. Good summon to have. Also gives HP in the back. Dogu, kind of not really used. Dogu, like, the thing with the crest summons is, I've mentioned this in previous videos as well. The thing with the crest summons is now that we have stuff like Titan that you can throw in the back and Yggdrasil that you can throw in the back, and they have attack boosts, you know, just flat percentage. Depending on how many crests you have, I think the crest summons don't start beating the primals until you get to like 3 crests or something. So if you're doing like a quick burst, even if it's using crests, this might not be better unless you can get a certain amount of crests, you know, in that short amount of time, right? So not really the most used thing. Mandrake is still very good. I keep talking about Mandrake in various places because Mandrake is still very good. The strength and the dispel cancel is pretty good on this summon. Just pretty much that. The strength of the dispel cancel is nice. The dispel cancel is like situationally good, but it is there, and the strength is just good for short bursts, right? Also, she has really good call as well, for doing debuffs and such like that. Mandrake, pretty good. Is there any other summon in here? Galleon, you know, it's Galleon. You want it maxed out, if you can get it. I think that's kind of it. The only other thing, you know, obviously there's, you know, normal Bubs, Belial, Summer Belial, you know, all these generic summons that are good. The one thing that I do want to mention though is actually Summer Bubs. This is something that can work with Glorybringer MC again when hitting off element, because this summon allows you to hit on Ellie, you know, essentially on Ellie, kinda. It's not like they're actually water, but you get to hit effective damage against that enemy, right? So that's good for Glorybringer MC, because Glorybringer MC is like all your damage, or MC in general is like all your damage. So this can be situationally good. It's not going to really be useful for Guild War, but it's a summon that I wanted to bring up because I've been testing it a bit. So yeah, that's kind of it for summons. There's really not a lot to talk about with summons because they're always kind of the same thing, right? So yeah, let's move on to the big one, which is characters. Okay. Actually, before characters, one other thing. I wanted to go to extra grids, right? Because I forgot to do this when I was talking about weapons, right? And I started talking about some characters, and I was like, I kind of need to talk about extra grids first, right? So extra grids, some stuff I have been experimenting with, right? Let's check out. This is something that I tried for Fall 0, right? So this is the type of setup that's going on in my mind right now. This is the type of setup that's going on in my mind right now, which I think this setup is fine, because this setup, I was trying to test out Medusa and Olivia together, right? And I'll come back to this once I start talking about Medusa. This is the reason why I need to circle back to this. But I want to talk about the weapons first, right? So I think this is fine. This is a place where using double world ender is good. This type of grid also gets you to 100, or well, not 100%, but it gets you to maxed out TA rate from the grid, right? It gets you from maxed out TA rate because you have the Fall 0 key, and you have the the Celestial, and then you have the two world enders that help, right? And this is actually, this setup was Bubs and Bubs Titan. You may want to just do double Titan for something like this, but I wanted to test out Bubs as the main summon, right? But yeah, so this is one of the types of setups that I had. Another type of setup that I had was actually in Hexa. I tried the exact same thing in Hexa with Berserker, right? And I'll go over this. These were testing Medusa, so I will come back to these in a moment when I talk about Medusa. But I just wanted to show you this type of grid that we're working with, right? So this is kind of something that I'm thinking about when it comes to high level stuff with extra grids right now, right? So Now, with that being out of the way, let's actually talk about Medusa, right? So, coming back to Medusa, or going to Medusa for you guys, coming back for me because I already went here, and then I was like, oh, I need to talk about Chris. So, going to Medusa, have my opinions on her changed? I have tried to test Medusa in a lot of stuff. I've tried to test her in regular full autos for things like, you know, Tefnut, Womdis, the Leviathan Mare. I've tried to test her in longer full autos, things like Lindworm, things like my Bub setup. I tried to bring her into my Bub setup and see how that worked. And I've tried her in high level stuff, right? Medusa is very restrictive. She's very restrictive, and I still do not feel that there's that much that she gives to make up for that restriction, right? So the thing about it is, I want to preface this by saying I had decent results with Medusa, believe it or not. And the thing that I really want to exemplify is I didn't even go for the full primal thing. So I didn't go for the can recast damage skills once each turn, and I didn't go for the buffs can't be removed. I didn't go for either one of these. I also didn't go for trying to end the skill cooldowns on her when I tested her, at least in high level stuff, right? So let's go back to those extra grids actually. So we'll look at the Berserker one first, right? This was what I used for Hexa. Unironically, this was kind of okay, right? I brought in Magus, which, to be fair, is also kind of a detriment because, you know, a lot of these setups that you bring to these higher level raids, you will bring a form of Tico so that you can get a free blue potion, right? But Tico is not a primal, so you need to bring a primal sack to bring Caim in so that you can do Medusa stuff, essentially, right? So that's pretty much what I did. That's pretty much what I did. Is I brought in Magus so that she could die, but you're losing a blue potion in that regard, right? So you're gonna have less healing just by default, right? Because you just have one less blue potion. Does that matter that much? That's kind of up to the player and how the run goes, right? But it's something that I need to point out. But I went with a comp like this because using Caim, in my opinion, is still absolutely necessary in these high level raids, right? But I want to show you, I'm going to actually go show you some of the damage. And my Fall Zero try that I tried with her was the exact same thing, only instead of Berserker, it was Chaos Ruler, right? But it's like the same exact grid, right? But we'll look at the Hexa first. I think it's this Hexa that I want to look at. Yeah. So if we look at no, actually it's not this Hexa. It's this Hexa because this one was faster, right? But if we look at this Hexa, her damage is actually pretty comparable to Olivia's. It's pretty comparable to Olivia's. Granted, she's being buffed by Olivia. But considering she does not have access to her double skill cast in this comp because I'm using Caim, her damage is still pretty comparable to Olivia, right? It's still pretty comparable. If we go and look at the Fall Zero that I did, the Fall Zero, also pretty much the same thing. Also pretty comparable to Olivia, right? So her damage, even without her double cast, is still okay. It's still okay. My issue with Medusa is not the damage, though. My issue with Medusa is that she doesn't necessarily do anything. She doesn't necessarily do anything special for this comp to justify really bringing her over someone like Shalem, Galleon, Arulumaya, Raziel. Over bringing characters like that, she doesn't do anything specifically well. It also hurts a lot that she does not support Caim or MC in any way, right? Which makes this team also a lot less tanky in general, because you just don't you don't have things that are helping everyone. It's only helping her and Olivia, right? So it becomes a bit iffy on defense, right? So where do I want to go from here? The next thing I want to talk about is kind of the grids, right? So I do have these grids, and these are the grids that I tested, right? And if you look here, they have this much HP, right? This much HP, and then if we go and look at the Fall 0 one, not that one, this one. If we go and look at the Fall 0 one, we have that much HP here, right? Now, also, by the way, on this Hexa setup, with these Exaltos now, MC was consistently, even without Berserker buff, hitting 2 mil autos, which is very important for Hexa with the Berserker setup, right? So that was kind of nice, I'm not gonna lie. But that being said, I actually have some earth stuff in my water and wind section over here. This one is, what is this? This is for Hexa as well. I think I would rather do a setup like this for Hexa, right? And you'll see the HP is higher here, right? I think I would rather do something like this if you're using Medusa, because the thing that I said before, she doesn't really do anything. She doesn't really help you mitigate damage overall. And the other thing too is because she doesn't really do anything, and her skills can't be recast, so you're not even spending time recasting skills. This team is like mash. It's very mashy. Olivia doesn't really use a lot of skills. Caim doesn't really use a lot of skills. MC, especially in this setup with the Berserker, you literally can't use skills. And Medusa doesn't really use skills. And the thing about Medusa's skills too is you kind of want to save Medusa's skills for whatever you need, right? So like, for example, in Hexa, you may want to save her S2 for like a 2 mil hit trigger, or for like a debuff trigger. You may also want to use her S1 for like a damage trigger, whatever, right? And then her S3 you may want to just use, you know, either to extend an omen or for debuffs, something like that, right? So she doesn't really want to press a lot of buttons. Your team doesn't want to really press a lot of buttons. So this team is very mash. But this team does not have a ton of defense because the characters don't really defend, right? They don't really defend. There's not a lot of reduction here besides the fact that you're just constantly taking water, and then there's some reduction on, like, you know, Medusa and Olivia because of Medusa, right? So you end up running into a lot of turns and taking a lot of damage. So I think I would rather run something like this and just get that extra defense from the Galleon Staffs, get some more HP, and be able to mash through like that. Because I noticed it a lot on Hexa and a lot on Fa 0 that I was taking a lot more damage than I had in the past. I was taking a lot more damage than I had in the past before Exalto came out, and I was just always running Galleons. You felt very, very tanky, especially with the characters that you were using, right? And see, this is the same thing with this setup right here, which again is the same thing that I had here. It's just Chaos Ruler. I think I would rather run something, oh god, not Tiamat, not Tiamat, right here. Titan. I think I would rather run something like this and have a little bit more HP, right? Also, again, this is why I said you may want to use double Titan instead of, you know, Bub's Titan, because you may want more HP from you know, that, from the Majesty that you're getting, right? So that might be something to think about as well. These grids could also potentially be changed around. Maybe you go down to like maybe one Exalto and put in like more world enders or something like that, right? I also will mention, for this Medusa team, there are some issues with this team. There are some issues with this team, and I'm not claiming that this is the best Medusa team in the game right now, but this is the one that I felt was probably the best, so this is what made the most sense in my head. But this team, first of all, I feel like I had more issues in Fa 0 than I did in Hexa. Although Hexa did have issues as well, because this team doesn't really CA, so getting a charge bar to take out the Fated Chain trigger in Galleon and Womnus phase, and getting charge attacks in the first place to deal with Willness and Ewiar phase is like impossible, because you want to use that 000 for the 5 hits, but you can't you can't 5 charge attack on this team without it, right? You can't do that. So dealing with both of those triggers is incredibly rough with this team. It's not very fun. It's not very fun. I will also mention, for the post 40% of Hexa, if you get the 3 dispel trigger, dispelling is pretty hard, because Medusa cannot reuse her S1 in this team comp, because, you know, you're missing that primal. So essentially that's the reason why, if I go back to it, if I go back to this Hexa setup, I actually have Zeph in here. So that at least I can do Zeph if MC is out of Berserker phase, which is another thing I'll bring up in a second. They can dispel, and then Medusa can dispel once. So that's your 3 dispels, and then if you need to handle it again, you can use Bubs, right? But I did say I come back to the MC thing. The MC thing with Berserker is, I said if MC is outside of Ulfhedin, which means with this team comp, it's probably best to assume that you post 40% if you're going to be mashing. You may just need to be out of Ulfhedin unless you have Bubs up, because you won't have access to that dispel at all times. Right? So it's kind of iffy with that, right? It's kind of iffy with that. Moving on from Hexa to Fall 0, some of the things I noticed in Fall 0 is that with Fall 0, first of all, the CA damage trigger at the start. The CA damage trigger at the start. I'll show you. I actually have my Fall 0 run recorded, so I'm going to bring that up, and we're going to go through some of the things I noticed that were issues with Fall 0, right? So let's start with that. Okay, so here we are, Fall 0, right? 20 mil CA damage, right? And the thing about it is, you may say, okay, why don't you just use 000 for this? The reason why you can't use 000 for this is because 000 is going to be used for the it's going to be used for the 5 CA on the 55% trigger, and then it's going to be used again to get rid of the 6 CA at 20%. So you can't use 000 here. You could, but it's going to make things weird later, right? And you essentially can't do the 5 CA one unless you cancel that, and then once you get to 6 CA, you just have to, I guess, tank that and then roll for another one, right? So that's just kind of right? So assuming all that, you kind of just want to deal with the CA trigger by yourself, right? You'll see here, right here, I will use Bubs on this. I'm also going to end up using 2 of my MC skills here, so that I can get to my 000 stack, so that I can amplify the damage, right? You'll see this once I press the buttons. Everyone has CA, right? Granted, one thing that may have been messed up here is Medusa, which, as you can see, is another issue with Medusa. Medusa has Yellow Apple and does not have a yellow skill. So she cannot get rid of this. So, granted, I will give her the benefit of the doubt. I may have failed this trigger because she hit 0 on her CA. That may have been the reason why. But the fact that that can happen and you can do nothing about it because you have Yellow Apple that you can't get rid of is not good. That is an issue, right? That is an issue. So you'll see here, I was pretty sure I missed this trigger, and I missed this trigger. So that is something else you may have to deal with. That is something else you may have to deal with. Now, what you could do potentially for this is you could potentially use Medusa's S3 to try and give you an extra turn to try and get MC up and CA again, to deal with this trigger. But therein lies another issue with Medusa. So let's go and see something over here, right? Once we get to 55%. So 55%. I went into this knowing this could be jank, but I wanted to test it first, right? So we'll see here on 6 attacks. Normally on Earth, the main way that you deal with this is you throw Caim a red card so that he can attack once, freely, and then your MC is 2 with Hrunting, then Caim actual attack, Olivia actual attack, and then whoever else actual attack for 6, right? And that's how I'm going to cancel this. But what I wanted to check here was, again, could I use Medusa's S3 to make it so that I could give myself an extra turn on this, so that I could just attack twice in a row and cancel the 6 attack, right? So you'll see here, let's use Medusa's S3. Once I use it, hold up, here we go. I'll skip through it. Okay, Medusa's S3 right here. The first one missed. The first one missed, which I assumed, I didn't assume, I guessed might happen. That's the reason why I did go ahead and set up my Caim red card before I used this, just in case it did miss, just so we could clear the run. But I wanted to check that. And you'll see, I'll go to the thing, because I wasn't even sure if it missed at the time, right? But you'll go and look at his bar. These 3 actually hit, but that specific one that makes it so that he can't do anything missed. So that does not work necessarily. It may hit, I don't know. I don't know if he just has the resistance to that one right here, but it can miss during this trigger. It can. It can, which means you can get screwed on this, right? Another thing that can miss on Medusa is actually her debuff. Her S2 debuff can miss. So what happens is, obviously her S2 stacks, right? It stacks up to 3. But once you get the third one, it is supposed to just hit 3 consistently, right? It's just supposed to give you a debuff for 3. So here on the debuff 10 times, right? If we go here, once I get to this button, Jesus Christ. Okay. So I press this, and as you can see, this misses too. This misses too. And this is what I mean when I say Medusa doesn't really do anything. Because even the things that she does, you can't really do anything with them, because half of the bosses it doesn't work with. The same thing, another thing with Hexa too. I'm going back to Hexa for a second, just because I'm thinking about things that mess up with Medusa, right? And I complained about this on Twitter, and Cheers, thank you Cheers for explaining this to me. Hexa, she has she has like the 100% data down, just like Olivia does, right? But with things like Hexa has the dragon buff, like the circle buff, where their triple attack rate will raise depending on how many stacks you have, and that just overrides Medusa's data down. So even if you put the data down on Hexa post 40%, depending on how many stacks you have, it can still attack more than once. It can still attack more than once, which again leads into the fact that your survivability is less with this team, because the main thing that Medusa is giving you for the survivability, yes, her S2 is good for permanently lowering damage, but her S3 is also big because it stops them from attacking you multiple times. But if it doesn't stop them from attacking you multiple times, it's not doing its job. It's not doing its job. So even if the debuff is on the boss, Hexa can still outpace that debuff depending on how many stacks you have. So this is what I mean when I say, why would you bring Medusa over another character when she has to be gimped by default, because you can't use her entire kit with Caim, and the kit that she has left over is sort of lackluster. It's sort of lackluster. It doesn't help with defense, it doesn't necessarily help with damage, and it barely helps with triggers. Even in Fall 0, when Fall 0 has the double dispel trigger, even though Medusa has a dispel, she cannot double dispel unless your entire team is primal. So you can't cancel that trigger either. So her dispel is essentially useless, except for dispelling the buff that you're going to get from failing the trigger. So you see what I'm saying? These are the ways that I'm saying that Medusa has issues even in high level content, which she's built for. So my point is, Medusa is made for Guild War. She's made for Guild War. Even her passive that resets stuff on enemy triggers, like when an enemy does something like a special move and then she resets. The thing about it is that's not even really good in high level stuff, because you don't want them to do it in the first place. You don't want them to do the trigger in the first place. You just want to cancel the trigger so that you don't take damage or debuffs or whatever. You just want to cancel it. You don't want to deal with it afterwards, right? So even that skill is not really that great in high level stuff, because you don't want to take that damage in the first place. So she's very made for Guild War, and she's very made for dealing with, like, being with all primals, right? And ideally she wants to do a lot of skill damage, so you want to bring like World Enders and stuff, right? But that is kind of the spot that Medusa's in right now. Does she do decent damage even without her passives? Yes. I think as long as you get the attack and the 2 skill damage related passives, she still does decent damage. She still does decent damage, especially with Olivia, because she's boosting that Olivia damage that she has too, right? Which also helps a lot. So does she do decent damage? Yes, even without the primals. But her kit is just not very good. It's just not very good. It has a lot of issues with it. It has a lot of issues with it that I hope I've tried to explain here with Medusa. So she's very much a Guild War unit, and until we get more powerful primals, she's hardly a high level unit either, because I don't know why you would use her over someone else. She doesn't bring anything specific that is specifically helpful over another character, right? And you're kind of gimping yourself by playing it like that, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Medusa in general. Okay, so we're back in the game now. One other thing I want to touch on with Medusa is Medusa, I will say, does have some decent synergy with some of the primals in Earth, right? Most notably, in my opinion, Uriel and Raziel. She plays with Raziel, even though she lacks a yellow skill or a red skill for her 3rd slot. I feel like she more than makes up with that, assuming you're running a whole Primal Pals team. She makes up for that by the fact that she can use her 2 red skills twice, right? So that helps with Raziel's stacks. She also, for the same reason, helps Uriel a lot, because Uriel, assuming you don't want to Ogi with Uriel, his biggest issue without Ogieing is that he doesn't get stacks that fast. But with Medusa potentially resetting her skills, depending on when the boss, does a special attack, and the fact that she can use her skills twice in a turn, makes it so that Uriel can more consistently throw out nukes, which is unironically pretty good, because his nukes are pretty good, right? And they give the supplemental damage down. So, unironically, those 2 characters paired with Medusa are kind of okay, right? Raziel is also pretty good for Medusa, because Raziel has a yellow skill that can play into Medusa's thing, right? To reset everyone's skill cooldowns. So, unironically, those 2 do get along well together. Those 3 get along well together. They do. Olivia is also a very potent partner, because she boosts the skill damage. She boosts the damage in general. She also gives guaranteed triple to Medusa, because she doesn't have it like innately, which is also good. Those two are also pretty good. Those 2 are also pretty good. Granted, Medusa does give a little bit to Olivia, just because she gives the bonuses to rival allies, but it's mostly Olivia helping Medusa, as opposed to like a platonic this is weird. This is weird. A good relationship. She has a better relationship between her and Raziel and her and Uriel than she does with Olivia. She's more so using Olivia than Olivia's using her. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? Then you have someone like Alex, where Alex is kind of just like, they don't really want to do the same thing. Alex's S1 does help Medusa, because it does give a stack, but Alex kind of wants to do Ogies, and Medusa kind of just wants to like do skill damage and kind of auto attack. Her Ogieing is kind of okay, but she doesn't have anything in her kit that pushes her to Ogie. She just Ogies like every other character, you know. So there are some potential spots with Medusa. I'm trying not to be too doom and gloom with the character, but I think she just needs more characters. Because that team, the team that she wants to play with, is just that team. It's just the team of her, Raziel, Uriel, Alexiel, and who did I say? Her, Uriel, Raziel, Alexiel. Who's the other one? Oh, Olivia. And Olivia. It's that team. You can potentially put Sandolphin, Sandolphin Altar or whatever, the Earth one, in as well. He does count as a primal, and his S3 actually does help Medusa stacks. I didn't realize this at first, but his S3 does, because it dispels, so it does affect her. So it does count for her buff skill as well. But that character, unless you're playing off Ellie, he's not going to be really used. So it's mostly the Alexiel, Raziel, Olivia, and Uriel. That comp is her comp. That is the main comp. If you're not playing that comp, she loses effectiveness by default, right? And you can only switch around that comp so many different ways to make it, effective, right? To make it effective. And you're kind of just stuck with that. Besides whatever you do with your MC, you can't really change much. You can't put in other characters to do whatever you need, right? So it's not all doom and gloom with Medusa anymore. I'm kind of past it a bit, but she does still have issues. She still has issues, and she still has restrictions that I'm not a fan of, right? So, okay, I think that's all for Medusa. If I have anything else I can think of, I'll put in an addendum. So, okay, next character. Let's talk about Shushuku a bit. Shushuku, not the greatest. She can play into Ogie teams a bit. She can be useful in the same way Medusa is useful for Raziel and Uriel, because she has red skills, and she can reset those red skills and use them again, which is decent. Shushuku also has the ability to kill herself. So you should kill yourself now. She can kill herself, which can bring in Lobelia, which is very good for Earth. I talked about it with like Glorybringer Hrunting. When you can reset that Glorybringer S1, that's very good. So bringing in Lobelia is very strong. So Shushuku being able to kill herself over time is decent. Especially if you can work around it with like Sieg daggers, or just getting her to take damage, or just getting her to like not use her shield or anything like that. Just having her die is a viable strategy for bringing in Lobelia, right? So that's unironically kind of nice. Okay, Raziel. I've talked about Raziel like twice now. I'm not going to spend too much time on her. Is Raziel good? She has very good things. Her Rubrum and Flavum buff her pretty well. Honestly, once she gets the, I always forget the name of them. The red one. What's the red one? Rubrum for red. Okay, I got it. Rubrum for red. Whenever she gets this to max and she can nuke with her S1, unironically a lot of damage. She does a decent amount of damage with this nuke, plus just the attack bonus that she has. And she has, it's just good. So that's good. Oh yeah, also she has the bonus earth damage effect, which is nice as well. Yeah. Let's see. Also when she has this is pretty good too. When she has both of these stacks together, she does a lot of damage. She also has this buff, which is pretty nice, not gonna lie. This buff is just really good. It affects Medusa. It's also just very good. This being a dispel is also pretty nice. This skill is good. This skill is also good. Still kind of hard to actually get this skill to go. We've also found out that depending on how you do things in full auto, this skill will get used at different times, because the thing that we've noticed in my crew, when it comes to full auto, is, let's say for example, pretty much, I'm not even going to go convoluted with this. Pretty much, if you full auto and let's say she's at 9 stacks of red and she's at 10 stacks of yellow, right? If you use up all your yellow skills, all your blue skills, and then you get to your red one, and let's say you get to 10 stacks of the red, right? You get to 10 stacks of the red during the turn, and that is your 10-10 for both stacks. She will not use this move on full auto until the next turn, because pretty much the way the skill queue goes is it goes yellow, blue, red, right? So pretty much once it gets to her turn, her spot on that yellow queue, if she is not 10-10, it will not go back to this button. It will not go back to this button. It will wait until the next one. But if it's the other way around, where she's 10 red and 9 yellow, and then she does like you have yellow skills that go off that get her to 10 before it's her spot, she will then use this because the game is still queued for yellow skills. So that is something to note when it comes to full auto and setting up your full auto parties. If you want to use a skill on full auto, you need to realize when this skill may or may not go off depending on when people use skills and how many stacks she's going to be at, right? That being said, the skill is good. It does a lot of damage. It's nice, right? But yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on Raziel. She's good. She's good. She's good but clunky. She's good but clunky. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Okay, moving on from Raziel. Let's go back. Amelia, I mean, she can clear. She can clear, not too bad. She also can give Earth Attack, which can help with Alexiel, because Alexiel wants Earth Attack, like the actual buff. So yeah, that's something. Kalulu, not really used. Yeah, not really used. Sabrina, OTK, you're going to see her in a lot of OTK. A lot of fast setups are using her like for very, very short stuff. Sabrina's being used because she does a lot of damage. She has the boosted triple attack rate. She has the bonus earth damage when she's full HP at the start, which you're going to be when you load into the fight. And then she also does this move when she autos at full HP. So she's good for very, very, very short bursts, right? Olivia, what more do I need to say? Olivia, the true Grand that appears on the subtext. This character is busted as crap. She does a ton of damage. She has a ton of utility, and she can buff someone else as well with this. And it's really, really good. She does a lot of damage. This is also very useful. This Twilight Terror might be used in Guild War just to make it so the enemy can't do anything for that amount of turns. She also gets this free attack. Like, she just does a lot of damage. She has utility. She's very useful. She's one of the star players of Earth right now, for sure. Very good character. Very good character. Useful in like every piece of content. Very strong. Very strong. Uriel, I've already gotten to the point. We have a ring on Uriel. I've said my apologies to Uriel at this point, but I can reiterate it here. Uriel has shown usefulness. He has shown usefulness. He has shown usefulness for giving his echo. He's shown usefulness for capping the water damage taken. He's shown usefulness for just doing a lot of damage in a short amount of time, or even prolonged fights. As we've gotten more characters to play with Uriel, he can do decent amount of damage in prolonged fights. He's not really a high level character still. I still don't think you really want to bring him to like, Fa Zero, Hexa, Super Ultimate Bahamut, unless you're doing like Execute for Super Ultimate Bahamut. You don't really want to bring him to those stuff. But he is okay in like full auto stuff. Probably could see some use in Guild Wars too. Yeah, not terrible. Still clunky, yes. Still clunky, yes. But I think I have made amends in my heart with Uriel. I think I have. He's not the greatest, but he is definitely a lot better than I originally gave him credit for. So yeah, especially as we've gotten more and more units. And like I said, with Medusa in particular, he plays high. I feel like he should have in the first place, where he gets his stacks continuously, from, characters doing red skills, right? Instead of having to be forced to Ogi to get his stacks. Medusa plays into his stack system very well, and I think that's good for him. So, yeah. I think Uriel is okay. He's fine. He has issues, yes. Pretty much the same thing as Raziel. I still have issues with both those characters, but they are definitely better than I originally gave them credit for, right? Especially as we've done more Earth stuff, right? Shalem, I am not going to talk about this character. If you want to see me rant and rave about Shalem, go back to the anti-ticks video I did at the start of the year. Shalem, very good for high level stuff. A ton of utility. I don't know if she'll really be used in Guild War. Maybe she does still have the double dispel when she uses her field. Plus she has her S2 in general. She also just has like debuffs in general. So maybe she sees some use kind of in the same vein as her water version did. But she's not really on my radar for Guild War at the moment. But maybe. Okay, next, Dante. Dante's abilities still kind of suck. Dante's biggest thing is his unique 10% echo, right? This echo right here on people's triple attacks. This is what you see Dante brought for various amount of bursts for, because he can just give this 10% unique echo. That is the thing. Is it good? Yes. He is pretty optimal in a lot of setups purely because of this. But Dante as a character is still not. No, he's still not very great. Like, as you can see, all his skills are turned off. That's how he is pretty much the entire time. He is literally just an echo bot. That is it. He is here for the echo. But considering we don't have any other character that does that, and we don't have any other character that's really better to take the spot, yeah, he gets used. He gets used. So yeah, that's pretty much Dante. Pholia. Oh my god. All my ghosts of the past. Pholia. Pholia, I have not made as much of amends with Pholia as I have with Uriel. I'll be real. Pholia still has pretty much every single issue that I said originally and that I've been saying. It's only her S1. Her S1 is everything. Essentially, her S1 can lock down the boss in the same vein as Olivia. It can lock down the boss and make them so they can't do anything, and then it's team-wide assassin for one hit, right? I would argue that the team-wide assassin is not even that important. It's the locking down of the boss. It's the locking down of the boss. The team-wide assassin is good. People are using her for like OTK. She does make it easier with the buffed HP from the OTK stuff now, the EX Plus. So that is good. Don't get me wrong. It is good, but it's really just her S1. That is what you're using this character for. Kind of in the same way that you bring Dante for his passive, you bring Pholia for that S1, whether it's to lock down the boss or it's to do some type of assassinate thing. That is what you're bringing Pholia for. Everything else is kind of irrelevant. I'll be kind of real. Her S2 does have potential, but you kind of don't really want to press the button in the first place. So yeah. Yeah, that's Pholia. Orchid also has Echo. Orchid can see a little bit of use because her Echo does actually work. Her Echo does actually work with Dante's Echo, and kind of in the same vein as before, where now that we can use Fall Zero Key and not Echo, we can bring her back for her Echo with Dante's Echo, plus using the Fall Zero Key, right? So you can use all of this Echo together. So she has very limited use for that Echo, but the use is there. The use does exist, right? Who else? Europa? No, not really. Skull and Belerga, kinda in the same vein as Shushuku. They can kill themselves. Kill yourself now. Vikala kinda, I mean, Vikala, she has the double strike, and she can, give her buff to someone, but I don't know if it's really worth the slot. I don't know if it's really worth the slot in a lot of comps, because a lot of her claim to fame was that double strike, but a lot of characters on Earth need to do other things. Raziel needs to start working on her stacks. Olivia needs to start, lowering her skill cooldown. Uriel needs to build up his stacks. Medusa needs to get whatever, scraps of a primal buff she can get at the start. So essentially, there's not a lot of units that don't want to just start on the field at the start and can already do damage that matches what the double strike from her would have given you, right? Especially because she doesn't do damage herself. So her usefulness is kind of falling because, like, there's no room. There's no room, and her buff and her double strike are just not a lot to counteract that, right? So yeah, even her usefulness before, where it was like, okay, she can have a character dodge something like Tefnut, right? Like Tefnut's blind. On Earth now, essentially what you do is you just burst past that trigger. You lock it down with Olivia, and then you just burst past that trigger, right? Instead of even needing to take it in the first place. So even that usefulness for Vikala is kind of lost at this point. Okay, moving on. Galleon is kind of still just a masher. She's kind of still a masher. Her usefulness is kind of fallen in full auto just because we have other characters to put in those spots now. She kind of can still be used for high level stuff like Super Ultimate Bahamut. I know people have used her for like Hexa solos. She's been in there. She's alright. She's an option, but she's not like crazy right now, and I don't know if she'll really get any Guild War use. Illnott, kinda, maybe not really getting used right now. Not really getting used. Not really getting used for her burst. Not really getting used for anything, honestly. Kind of still in that lurking legend status. Just kind of not really used, to be honest. Cucuroux, ironically, is kind of getting outed out of Diaspora now because people are just opting to do one-turn things instead of using her. I still think she's really good, though, for Diaspora. I still think she's the queen of Diaspora. She's just very made to deal with that raid. But has fallen off. And there's not a lot of space for her in normal comps either. She doesn't really do anything that's like crazy. So yeah, Diaspora, and if you're doing like this, the Ultimate Bahamut full auto, which you can do a different one now with Exalto, that's pretty much her only spot. Diantha is good for boosting MCs if you're not using Bub's main. Yeah. Cidala, it's kind of crazy that until this character gets FLB, this character is not getting used at all. Like, maybe Super Ultimate Bahamut, but I know some people even dropped her from Super Ultimate Bahamut mashing as well. This character, like, not used. Like, not used. Like, there's just no space, and she doesn't do anything that's like crazy that you're really using her for. Satyr, we're not really ogging as much as we did before, so she's kind of dropped. Same thing with Anthuria, especially with Hrunting. Anthuria has fallen off ever since. So yeah, no. Fiorito did get her, rebalance? Fiorito actually does a decent amount of damage, and her removing a buff and doing this on Ogi is kind of nice, but you have to play into the fist grid, and we talked about how crowded grids are right now. It's not something that you necessarily go for. And the only thing she got from her rebalance was just more damage, so she doesn't have anything else that really changes how she plays. She just does what she did before, but like better, right? All of these characters, not really. Moni is still good if you want to use Ogi stuff. Besides that, not really. Mariah and Rosette, I gotta bring them up because I love them, but they really just triple attack bots, and there's kind of better characters for that now anyway. Sandolphin, not really a Guild War character, but he's okay for continuing to put water on the boss. Narmaya still our best burst character. I mean, she's Narmaya. She does play better with the Glorybringer setup now, I will say that, because you can play Glorybringer. Essentially, Glorybringer is more used now, and Glorybringer wants to use the Amp Harp more, which also plays into Narmaya. So she got like inadvertently buffed because we play Glorybringer more, right? So good. Medusa, not really. Pengi, again, a triple attack character like Mariah and Set, but Pengi has a nuke too, so Pengi is kind of like a good slot over Mariah and Rosette. Lobelia, Lobelia is his S2. His S2. This resetting cooldowns for other people, or sorry, not this one. This one. His S2. This resetting cooldowns for other people, very good. Resetting Glorybringer MC, resetting people like even Pholia to lock down people and get that buff back faster. Just good, right? His S2 is what he's doing. Also, he buffs the skill damage from the back row, which helps people like Olivia get the buffs that she needs. Technically would be good with Medusa, but Medusa is racist, so she likes Medusa, or she likes Lobelia, but she also hates him. Classic tsundere. She likes the skill damage stuff, but he's human, so she doesn't like that. So yeah, but Lobelia mostly the skill damage buff and the S2, right? Mahira not getting used. None of these characters really getting used. Caim, very good. Caim is very good for, Earth as a whole. I think most people have moved away from him being backline, but he is still core frontline for high level stuff, because you want to make it so that you constantly take water damage, plus his other buffs, plus just his utility on stuff like S4, just very good. And his copy ability, things like that. Still very core for high level. Don't know about like Guild War stuff, but very good, right? Alexiel, her FLB is kind of like alright. She kind of wants a CA now. This takes forever if you're not building a CA team. So if you're not doing a CA team, this can just take 50 years. Not amazing. This skill is pretty good. This is like really good, assuming it works. And I say that for things like Leviathan, where Leviathan just goes through this regardless. But this is good because it essentially does not get taken up. Both of these do not get taken up if they get used, right? So if you block a debuff, this still stays for the 5-turn duration. If you get dispelled, this still stays for the 5-turn duration, right? So this is good. Plus she just has Unchallenged, and this Unchallenged is for everyone, and it lasts for the entire turn now instead of just one hit. So you could bring her for stuff like Hexa, and you can take, like the 40% with this and just walk through it, right? You also have this right here where it converts water damage and lowers this. Kinda okay, but cannot compete with Caim, who does it permanently. So not really the best, but it's like okay, I guess. So yeah, her FLB is like alright. It's alright. Alethea, kind of the same thing as you did before. You can use him for like Ogi comps and stuff like that. He has a bit of utility. Okto, maybe for some full auto stuff on Guild War. He still does reduce water damage. He gives earth attack. He gives the spell cancel and the veil on Ogi for that turn. Can still be useful if you're doing an Ogi team. Sarasa, my love. Sarasa, in the same vein as Skull and Belerga and Shushuku, kill yourself now. Just don't, because I love you. But yeah, she can kill herself. She can also do a pretty decent amount of damage if you actually use all her skills and keep her alive. She is still a very good auto attacker. Yeah, she's a decent character, not the best, but she's still very strong, right? She's still very strong. None of these characters, and Razia can be useful, kinda, for tanking damage and doing counters and double ogging and stuff like that. Plus she gets the amplifying thing, kinda Razia. And Arulumaya is still pretty decent because Arulumaya has the buffs here. She has the utility. She has the debuff resistance. She also has just this where she reduces damage taken, so she makes it a lot safer to just, you know, be alive. So Arulumaya is still very good, very strong character, right? Arulumaya is still fine. So I think that's all the characters, actually. I think that's mostly all the characters for Earth right now. Okay, so with all that being said, that's pretty much the rundown for Earth pre-Guild War. I don't think anything's really going to change. I think the only thing the only thing that isn't out right now that will be out for Guild Wars is the Sumabito class. But I don't know if that will really change anything for Guild War or Earth in general. Because it's gonna be like fists. So, and that takes us away from Hrunting, so I don't know how useful that will be. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So Earth right now is in, I will call it a transition period. I don't know where they're gonna go from here, honestly, because the main thing that we were looking for Earth for a while was PNS and then Exalto, and now that we have PNS and we have Exalto, where do we go from here? Because even the possibility of like a Finny staff weapon is kind of out there for me, because we have Hrunting. So I feel like Finny staff was kind of something to give Fire a good main hand besides the Exo Dagger, because its Gold Moon weapons weren't the best. But we already have Hrunting, so I don't know if we'll really get a Finny staff weapon. I've said for a while that I think that Earth, if it's gonna get a weapon like that, it's going to be more in the vein of Cosmos. Not to say that it's going to be Ogi based, but just that it's going to be, we're going to get like a grand character that has something completely new, but it's not necessarily a main hand. It's just something that you might throw in a grid, right? So I see that as being some type of weapon we get in the future. As for characters, it seems that they're going to try and push us. The objective with Earth, it seems, is they're trying to push us away from Galleon Staffs by giving us more HP with the Exalto, and they're trying to push us away from Caim by giving us Medusa, who is supposed to, you know, compensate for that, and stuff like Alexiel, and just also the fact that we have more HP in general. If you do take Exaltos and Galleon Staffs together, we will have more HP to compensate for the fact that we're losing Caim, right? So it seems that's the type of thing they're trying to push us towards. It seems that they're trying to push us towards Primal as well, like using Primal characters, because we have Medusa, we have Uriel, we have Raziel, we have Olivia, we have Alexiel, FLB, pretty much all the really relevant Earth characters that have been released as of late have been Primal, and then our FLB was also a Primal, so it seems that's where they're trying to push us, is to use more and more Primal characters. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that is pretty much the state of Earth right now going into Guild War. It's okay. It's in an okay spot, but there's still, in my opinion, a lot of restrictions and a lot of clunkiness. So I don't really know what to guess going forward, as I said, but we'll see how it goes. We will just see how it goes, and we'll just, you know, we're along for the ride at this point. But I don't know. We may get something right after Guild War 2 to kind of go with this. I don't know if it's going to be another grand, but we may get something else. If not, we may get something for like Halloween or Christmas that goes with the Ellie as well, that plays into the stuff that it's trying to push now. But we'll see. I have no idea. And until we get like Water Exalto, I don't really know what they plan for like the next big weapon series after the Exaltos, right? So we'll just have to, pretty much we're just in, like I said, we're in a transition period. We just have to see what happens next, right? So yeah, that's the pre-Guild War Earth video. We will see how it goes during Guild War, and we'll see what people can cook up in general for grids, because grids are still very transitionary as well, and very experimental right now. We're trying a lot of different stuff, and there's only so many trials in a day. Why are there only 4 trials in a day, side games? Please just make them unlimited. You don't get anything from the trials, dude. Nothing. I don't understand. Anyway, I'm not gonna rant. All that being said, that's it for this Earth video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support as always, and bye-bye. Okay, so a few things to bring up for this addendum. First of all, there's two Medusa things I need to address. One of the things that I said for Medusa is that it is hard to dispel Hexa post 40% because if you're not using the full primal team, she can't reset her S1, which is still very true. But what I did discover, I thought about it after I was watching the video back, and I was like, I wonder if Caim can copy her S1, and he can. So technically, you can get 2 dispels off of that, which does alleviate it a bit if she plays with Caim, but that's, you know, you still have to just do that, right? You still have to copy it. You need Caim to copy it, or a primal so she can use it twice. The other thing is, Hexa also has a 20 mil CA damage trigger like Fog did, and this time we don't have the excuse of Medusa having the yellow apple. So I actually did have some footage of a Hexa run right here where I hit this 20 mil CA and also failed this one. So I wasn't able to bubs this one this time, but I just attacked, and you can actually see right here that my MC, like I was watching this to see like how much damage it would do, and my MC actually does 7.5, which means these 3, I refresh after this, I don't know how much they did, but these 3 failed to do what, like what is that, like 12.5 between the 3 of them. They failed to do that. So yeah, I don't really know what happened there, but yeah, they didn't do that. so that failed. Yeah, so I guess if you're running this comp, you just 000 that one, like to use your cancel, and then try and cancel the rest of the stuff. Normally, I guess that's where you use your 000 cancel. Okay, so the other thing is I forgot to mention Raziel's gun. Raziel's gun is still not finished for me, even though I could bar it right now, and I could get bullets to test it right now, but I haven't tested this. We also did not get a character that plays into helping this at all. So while the Exalto may help for Guild War with this weapon, it's still yet to be seen. I haven't seen anybody test it. Well, okay, I did see one person, Alec, from one of the supporters of the channel. Thank you. We talked a bit on Discord, and he was using this gun a bit, and he was having like some success with it. But it's nothing like outlandish yet. So until I see something outlandish, or I can just test it myself, this is still like kind of on the fence because we just didn't get any support for it besides the Exalto itself. So yeah, kind of on the fence of this for the gun, but I forgot to bring it up, and it could play a part in Guild War in the future going forward. So yeah, I think that's all for the addendum. So again, thanks for watching, thanks for the support as always, and bye-bye.